The Witcher. Rated R for retarded. Hey guys, Jonathan here. I'm gonna just jump right in here and just start talking about The Witcher 3. Now, one thing I'm not gonna talk about is gameplay, signs, magic, and all that other gameplay elements. You can find that in other videos. I'm gonna talk about the story and the lore here. One of the things that The Witcher does that not many games do in terms of exploring and storytelling, they dabble in it, but they don't go full-fledged. Think of Castlevania, specifically some of the newer Castlevanias. You'll find dead bodies, right? And on the dead bodies, you'll find a note. And that note will say something in regards to maybe, sometimes, very rarely they did this, but sometimes it will explain a monster you're about to fight. And it gets your brain going. It gets your brain going and thinking a few steps ahead, or in the next area, I'm going to encounter this thing that killed this guy. And so automatically, then and there, you have this story. You have this lore about the character or enemy you're about to fight. This is what The Witcher does, but it does it and it expands on it in spades. For example, when you're going in a lot of games, let's say the Griffin fight that we've seen on so many trailers for The Witcher 3. In most games, there'd be a griffin, you'd travel up the mountain, you'd fight it, you'd bring back the head, show that you killed it, boom, done, next story. No, in The Witcher, there's a fairy tale around the griffin, there's a story. And around every monster or boss or quest or whatever that you're going on to kill whatever monster you need to get rid of, there's a little story about it. Each story has its own little fairy tale around it. In The Witcher 3, you learn about the griffin. You're hearing about the problems that people have been having with this creature, what kind of encounters they've had. You go and explore its nest. You figure out that its mate had died. You figured out the mental state of this creature. You figure out all these things, and then you go back into town, you get more info. There's lots of exchanges and lots of story building around this monster. So by the time you actually do fight it, it's this now cooked up story in your head, and now the fight becomes that much more amazing. Killing it is much more imperative or significant than it was if you were just sent there by the game to kill it, bring back head, blah, blah, blah. It makes what could be a simple go to A to B, kill C, go back to A type of mission into a more memorable experience. And that's the key word. Memorable experiences. It's great storytelling. It's you getting told a story. Now you're getting ready. It works up the anticipation. It's like getting on a roller coaster. You have this anticipation of riding the roller coaster. You have all these mental images of what it's going to be like, what bad things could happen, how are you going to feel, what kind of feelings are you going to get from actually being on it? I'm nervous, I'm scared of heights. And then you finally reach that point where you get on the coaster and you ride it, and now you're in the experience. That's what I think of in these types of games. The Witcher specifically, when they tell these lore-filled stories. I love lore because it builds this little tiny fairy tale that you haven't experienced yet, but you've heard a lot about it, and you're getting ready to meet this creature or fight this creature or interact with this creature or talk with it in some way. You've had people telling you that it's evil, maybe it's not so evil, maybe it's good. You don't know because you haven't experienced it, but all of this anticipation is now worked up into your mind, and now you get to go on the actual journey and find it and experience it and maybe fight it, kill it, talk to it, come to some kind of resolve. I love that. I don't know why a lot of games don't explore this. This caught my eye when I played the first Witcher. When I played the first Witcher game, it started talking about drowners. Drowners are basically people that have been murdered, maybe victimized, raped, killed. Their bodies are discarded in the rivers. Maybe they tied somebody down with bricks on their feet and tied them and threw them in the river, and they drowned in the river. some way these people were disregarded. They weren't buried properly. People telling you these stories about people that have been killed, thrown in the river, disregarded, and now supposedly, there's these monsters that come out of the river at night. So what are you going to do? What did I do when I first played The Witcher? I waited till nighttime, and then I went down, and I think I was on a quest. I don't remember quite if I was. I went down by the river. Sure enough, these things came out of the water, and it's made that much more creepier because you've been told all these scary stories about it, and now you're going out and experiencing it. It's kind of like the Slender Man. You know, they give you these stories and stories and stories. Now you're about to go out in the woods where people have been seeing it to see if you can find it yourself. I wish they would do this a lot more in horror games, in any game, and in a lot of games with fantasy, medieval things where you're going to encounter something that hasn't been seen before. Work the player's imagination up. Get them ready for it. Give them some kind of story. Cook up a story. You know, I mean, this goes back to when we were kids. You know, your dad or your mom would tell you some kind of fairy tale and it were some kind of weird story. My dad used to tell me a story of how this old lady lived up in the mountains and she was killed by a mountain lion, and it was by the train tracks and all these other things that went on, and all of a sudden she's not coming to town and buying groceries no more. Did she get killed by the mountain lion? Did something else happen to her? You know, you cook up all these, as you're listening to the story, you cook up all these interpretations of what could have really happened. Did she really get eaten by a mountain lion? Was it a monster that came and got her? Did she just get lazy and just decide not to come back to town anymore? Did she run away? You won't really know until you go on the journey yourself and figure it out. So, you know, that's my biggest thing on video games, and I wish they would do it a lot more, is just storytelling, explaining, working the player's imagination up, and then sending them on the journey. Well, what is this monster gonna be like? What is, you know, that kind of thing. Do it. Developers out there, if you ever watch this, just do it, man. Don't just send person on a fetch quest on an A to B story, you know. Go kill this monster, come back and it's meaningless. Oh, I got experience points. Oh, I killed that monster and I got a really cool weapon. Big freaking deal. Let's start telling some stories, man. I want to hear something that will get me motivated to go on this journey for a special reason, and then when it's done, I remember it. It's stuck in my mind forever. And I think that's what The Witcher is going to do. The Witcher 3. The other Witcher games have done this, but I think The Witcher 3 is going to set the bounds in terms of not only lore and storytelling, but finally gameplay and all this other stuff. They finally worked all the kinks out that they've had in the last two games. And that's what's going to set this game apart majorly from the rest of the titles that are out there right now, because they're just going to do a phenomenal job on storytelling. There's not just one main story you're going through. There's all these little quests that you're going to go to that are going to have stories just as memorable and just as big as the main story. The Witcher 2, for example, and I'm going to give you a nice example to let you know that they've done this already, and plenty of times in their past games. There's a mission in The Witcher 2, couple of missions actually. There's one where you go into an underground, what used to be, I guess, a castle. You go down underground, you find these ghosts and spirits down there. And, you know, these are the ghosts and spirits of long ago that have been done wrong. And basically, I forget the whole story exactly, but you encounter the ghost down there. He explains to you the story. And I guess since I can't remember it, I won't ruin it. I won't be able to ruin it for you. But basically, the gist is the ghost sends you out. You have your own choice. The choice is not gray. It's not good or bad. You can either, I think you can fight the spirit, or you can decide to help it. I chose to help it. And you go out. You grab these men that are directly responsible for the predicament that they ended up in and why they're down there and not properly buried. And they had just this, you know, this poor experience in death. And you bring those men back, and then I think there's even more decision making when you bring the men back. You can either hand them over to the spirit or do something else, whatever. But ultimately, you hand them over to the spirit. I think he kills them. I'd have to. It's been years since I played The Witcher 2, but I think he gets rid of these guys, and you basically helped their situation by resolving it and getting rid of these two evil men that, you know, caused them turmoil. But this is a small little story, but yet after all these years, I'm able to remember it as if it was a main portion of the game. This was a side quest. This was a little side quest, and I remember it. There's also another side quest that's even more memorable. You help a succubus. You can either, I think you can fight her or just ignore her altogether, but Dandelion or Dandelion or whatever you want to call him, he gets involved with the succubus and you help him out, blah, blah. There's a lot of choice making in this. I won't ruin it, but that was another memorable story. Succubuses, they try to lure you in, and she does that in the game, and it's amazing, and in itself is a story. This is what I think The Witcher does right. I can't wait to see what they do in the third one. Developers out there, other developers, start doing this stuff. Start telling some stories. Get us enthralled in the experience. And I promise you, for a single player game, we'll be that much more happier. Thanks for listening, guys. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. You can find me on Facebook, same thing, facebook.com/charactervoice, Twitter/Laffin, Laphin. Hey guys, put in the comments. I want to know what you think about all this stuff. But I think that this storytelling experience is going to be the major drive for The Witcher 3. May your stories be just as amazing as mine.